So just lifting the arms into riding horse. So just feel as though you're sort of lifting a tray, like a heavy tray. And so that the problem with lifting something heavy is that it pulls you forwards like this. So you actually need to lean back a little bit with the upper back to get yourself stable, because your center of gravity is now shifted a little bit forwards. So let's try that again. So the idea is that the arms coming up actually helps pack you down into your legs. Okay. So the feet on the floor are, there's the feeling that the feet are trying to sort of come in, the toes. Yeah, so it's the opposite of this. So the toes are trying to come in, but the knees are trying to go out. So there's a torque, there's a twisting action in the shins. And it's the same with the arms, yeah. So the wrists, the hands, they're sort of moving towards each other, but the elbows are moving out. So everywhere you look, there's a play of opposing forces. Okay, now just feel the waves of the upper body, just making this spread here. So you're the feeling that it's the energy sort of start flowing down your spine and splitting and then coming down the outside of the legs. So the action of gravity plus your own sinking, your own relaxation, will actually make you spread. So you'll expand. So what we want to try and connect with is the opposing force to that. So the internal contracting force that makes me cohere here in my down chair. So what we're trying to do really is just, we're trying to get to this. We're trying to get to this exercise. But we don't want it to be an imposition. It's not something that my mind has imposed upon my body. It's something that reveals itself when I quieten down and relax. So as I just stand here patiently, just waiting for something to happen, it's that relaxation outwards that exposes the pull in. That's the muscle. That's the driving force. Yeah. So once you feel that, you can just sort of go with it, just exaggerate it a little bit, and then just let it release. So it's like breathing. So it's just a pump. Okay, so just try and really go for the leaning back phase as well as the pulling the belly in phase. So here, just slowly applying more and more tightening of this lower spine in order to get this really open, and then let it come back. So you're basically switching from front to back. So now I'm pulling here. And this is really opening up. And then I'm pulling here. And then my back is opening up. Okay, and now just back to riding horse. Okay, so now let's just try working. So just doing something very simple. Yeah. So just closing the hands and opening the hands. Closing the hands, opening, closing. So really stretch and then really clench. So basically most actions can be considered either like an opening or closing or a combination. And what we want to do is just train the body to get it all coming from here. Yeah. So just starting this action, just feel how, if you do it really sort of wholeheartedly, Then you start contracting here to actually close the hand. And then you start extending the spine to open the hand. So even the simplest action we can get from the down chin area. So the feeling is that you're opening and closing your hands with your whole being, not just the hands. Everything is involved in this simple action. It's like the baby, when the baby sucks the breast, it sucks with its whole being. When it shits with its whole being. When it cries, everything is involved. It hasn't learned to sort of multitask. So here, I'm pulling in the belly. And so what we have to learn to use these muscles as though they're being resisted. So when you have a little bit of resistance, it's much easier to actually sort of control the muscle. Okay, now let's just start it again. So just try doing this. So what you want to feel is how, you don't need to do many rounds of this before you can feel everything pulling in, everything pushing out. So you're just really physically engaged from this basic opening and closing machine. Cool. So it's almost like you can't stop it. You can't just do this anymore, because it kicks in everything. Okay, now keep it going. And now we'll get the eyes and the mouth involved. So first the eyes. So when you expand, you open the eyes really wide. And then when you contract, you screw them up and really squeeze them tight. And then here, opening and squeezing closed. Opening, closed. Opening, closing. Opening, closing. Opening, closing. So think of the eyes as being instruments of intensity rather than things that you see with. So we're not worried about what we're seeing. We're just really expanding them and screwing them up. So it's the ring muscles around the eyes that close them that we're exercising, really squeezing the eyeball, and then really, like trying to get your eyes to pop out the head. In, out, in, out, in. Now the mouth as well. So now as you open up, you just make a small hole. So you sort of tighten the lips, and then here you screw the mouth up, you widen the mouth. So, it's like you're exercising all the facial muscles. Okay. And now just back to here. And now let's just slowly so what enables us to move side to side is the fact that this pump splits into two. So basically one hand closes, one opens, one closes, one opens, yeah. So this is a principle that John was just very interested in. This idea that when you work something like the down chin, that is just one thing, when you work it with real intensity, it splits into two, and then you can play with that duality. Yeah. So it's like I tighten this hand. As I tighten this hand, my toes do exactly the same thing. So my arm and my leg are really the same thing. So as I tighten here, the toes clench the ground. And as I tighten the hand, the arm naturally bends and the leg naturally bends. So it sort of pulls me into it. And then the other one is doing the opposite. So that helps push me there as well. Because as I open here, the toes are splaying. The leg is trying to inject into the ground and straighten. Yeah. So as I do, you know, so from, let's say from here, yeah. So as I do this, everything conspires to move me in that direction. And I just let it. And then when I tense the other hand and straighten the other hand, then, yeah. So just try and feel as though it's coming from the hands. Yeah. So I tighten here, that foot tightens, the toes clench the ground, that pulls me across, and then here. So pull. So what's very difficult about it is just keeping an equal mind with each phase. Yeah? We tend to just concentrate on one, which you can do. I can just concentrate on the contracting phase. Yeah? But what we'd like to do is to be able to do both phases at the same time without locking them together. And it's that produces the detail, if you like, that sort of unpredictable shimmer. So I tighten one and straighten the other. And again, we want to feel the same way it felt when we just opened and closed both hands and it got the Dan Qian coming in. It's the same thing here. But what's difficult about it is that to clench, I have to pull in here, and to straighten, I have to extend here. So there's a real torque, twisting action going up the spine. Because I'm pulling down here, but extending back here. So you can't think about it, you just have to just practice and get to a pitch where it just feels like you've become this crazy machine. And it's all coming from this general area. And then with practice, it will just clarify. Wow. You can think of the hand clenching and then the other hand. If it's difficult to get both at the same time. So the clenching happens first, if you like, and then the extension happens at the end of the phase to really get yourself into this for 100%. So I clench, I expand, clench, expand. So the important thing is just make sure it gets into the foot as well as the hand. So you want to just train your feet to just do exactly what the hands are doing. Right. So, okay. So let's just bring it back here for a second. Okay, now let's just work a bit on the lower sphincters before we get into this a bit more. Yeah. So, so basically, when we're doing this phase, screwing the eyes up, then we are pulling the sphincter that stops you. Where you, if you wanted to stop yourself peeing, you sort of clench here. So the eyes and the front sphincter are connected. and then the mouth or the eyes opening, the mouth doing this, or sucking, if you like, the sucking. Imagine the baby sucking milk, and it's difficult for the milk to come out, so it has to, it sucks with everything. So it also tightens the anus. So we'll just try a little bit of this. So just screwing the eyes up and just tightening here. It's a bit like tightening the denture. And then sucking the cheeks in, like you're trying to suck milk out of something that's just got a tiny hole in it. And just tighten the anus, like you're pulling the anus up into the denture. And then tightening here, relaxing the anus. And then eyes. And so here the anus is trying to pull up to the denture, and then here the urethra sphincter is trying to pull up into the denture. It's like here you're peeing, writing your name in the snow, and here you're shitting. So this is like the anus relaxing, and then this is the urethra relaxing. So we're just trying to split the two. I mean, normally they would all tense together. So here, but if we want to get movement, then we need to alternate. So this is producing movement on this sort of whipping plane like this. It's very double weighted, it's just one thing. So this is the anus tightening and the mouth tightening. And then this is the eyes tightening and the urethra tightening. So whilst the back tightens and the front tightens. Okay. And now let's just come to writing mastery. So it almost feels like we're trying to allow the drives, the Freudian drives, to sort of surface and sort of take over. Not because we want them to rule our lives, but because they actually take us into a level of embodiment that we've lost. It's quite interesting, there's quite a few books coming out in America. Zen is very big in America. And there's quite a few Americans enlightened masters. But what they found is that one of the problems of just sitting down meditating for long times is that you lose sense of your body. And so they're developing all these exercises that help bring them back to the body. So we're trying to sort of just get back to a deeper level of the body by just getting these sort of impassioned movements to just take over the whole body. In the same way, I remember seeing, when I came to Israel, the first couple of months, I went to see a movie on dance, tribal dancing. And there was this African woman just doing this very sort of monotonous dance like this, but she was really getting into like a rhythm, a groove, and then there came a point where the spirit just took over and she just went wild, just all these completely different movements started coming out, and then she just fell down unconscious. So like just getting into some real trance state where you get to real sort of heightened awarenesses that we've forgotten they're there, with our modern sort of bland lives, our comfortable lives. Well, I've just downloaded a book on virtue. And what the author was saying is that it's the reason we don't really develop virtue anymore is because our lives are too easy. So you only really develop your sort of superhuman powers, if you like, by tackling tasks that seem impossible without help from mummy and daddy or whatever. Okay, now let's try the alternate clenching again. But an easy place to practice it is just in the exercise where we just move backwards and forwards. Because basically what's happening is this one is clenching and this foot is expanding and this leg is really straightening. So what it feels like a leg has just become an extension of my spine. So I'm sort of almost arching back and extruding my tail down the spine. And then this, what you have to really sort of exaggerate, you have to get right to the very, very end in order to feel the natural return into the clench. So this is the thing. It's like we work from the wrong energy because we never really finish it. So here I'm really pressing into it, and then it has to come back. And so it's like it's not a decision that I make. It's just it's my body just behaving naturally. So I extend, and then this clenches me forwards. This extends, and then it pulls back. Yes, my arm and my leg are just doing exactly the same thing. But it's my feet are really active, so I'm really clenching the toes here. I'm sort of really digging in. And it's that clench which is accompanied, of course, by, because all the joints in the hand are bending. So basically everything is bending in the body, on that side of the body. So the elbow bends, the shoulder bends. So here, all the joints in the leg are bending, and that will draw me back. But then I have to also use the straightening here to make sure that I'm completely in this leg, and to almost flush this leg out. So this leg is completely empty, and this leg is completely full. And then they will naturally start filling up and emptying, start doing the opposite. If you only get part of the way, then the return has to be imposed by your mind. It won't naturally return. So 1. It's a bit like bouncing off a surface. It's like here, I just really press into a surface that's rubbery and springy, and then it will bounce me back. So you've got 2 minds, 1 in each leg. So they're really having to cooperate. They're keeping an eye on each other, making sure that they don't get too much out of phase. Yeah, so last time we were basically doing the same thing, but we were concentrating on the break here. But it's the same thing, just coming from a different place. So now it's just coming from the feet. So my foot clenches, this one straightens, this one clenches. So a different visualization produces a different mood, and so the energy is different. Okay. Let's try just changing this. Okay. So let's just first of all just go backwards and forwards easy. So the problem, most people when they come into the front foot, their hips sort of lead, so they sort of do this. Yeah. So what we want is to get. So as I'm coming forwards, I'm actually turning this way. Yeah. So you remember, one of the principles in the form that we used to do, or that we still do, was that when you finish a posture, everything is facing the same direction. So your hips have to be square, yeah. And most people would just let their hips be drifting off to the side a bit, which means their hip would be leading, if you like. So what the feeling when you move should be that the hip is almost staying behind. So it's the knee that's leading, not the hip. And what that will do is just get this natural yielding quality to bring this hip forward so that when you finish, your hips are square. Yeah? So the hips are always sinking and the knees are always rising. When they're bending. And now just getting the feet in going. So tightening this one. So let's get them one at a time to start with tightening this one. Clenching the foot. Clenching the foot. Clenching. And clenching. 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 Then you can just feel, if you want to get a really good clench, you have to open the hand very strongly before the clench. So here, this is the straightening of the toes, and then this is the clenching. This is the straightening of the toes. So it seems an awful lot to concentrate on. But the only reason we need to concentrate on it is because we're not working with the right spirit, the right sort of impassioned embodiment of energy. So it seems complicated, but then there comes a point where it clicks, and then it almost is doing itself. So it's basically the figure of 8. Just doing opposite, single weightedness, doing the opposite thing with each side of the body to generate movement, to generate energy. Okay, back to here. So the hands coming underneath and lifting something up. And that just slots me into riding horse. And then this play that we've been trying to generate with the ground is just that. Just here I'm sort of clenching, and then here I'm clenching, here I'm straightening. Yeah. So it's basically moving side to side using this action, or moving backwards and forwards like we've just been doing, but without letting yourself move. Yeah. So there's like, you know, I think of it in terms of sort of trying to sort of just soften the ground a bit, like you're kneading the ground, but alternately, in order to get the ground to share some of its energy with me. So on one level, the ground is this sort of hard surface upon which I can sort of lever myself with these strong muscles. But we know that that's just force. So we're always trying to get away from that. So the ground on one level is that sort of, is a place from which I can use force, but it's also a site of energy. And the energy that comes up from the ground is completely different than what you'd expect. You maybe would expect it to have the qualities of the ground, but it's not at all. It's basically, if you look at a tree, sort of blowing in the wind and its leaves rustling, or you watch a cat just walking, they're imbued with earth energy. The earth has just risen up into them because they're not fighting it, and that's what they express, obviously flavored by their treeness or their catness, but it's the same energy. It's very delicate and light, So you can just tap into it by just sort of kneading the ground a little bit, which we do with, especially these exercises we've just been doing with the clenching and the straightening of the toes, and then sort of this refusal to sort of use force, almost like you're talking. You like, someone that's really good with horses. They can just sort of whisper to the horse and calm the horse down, and the horse just understands them, knows exactly what's required. So it's like you're playing on the edge of movement. So I'm sort of kneading here. If I was to tighten any more, then I would slip across. So I just don't let that happen. I let the other one come in at that moment when I would start moving. I just switch, so that I'm sort of hovering. I'm trembling in this one spot. So this is one of the real difficulties is sort of just splitting the tension, which is what we're trying to do. So getting the two sides of my body doing opposite things. It's not a simple matter of this. You want it to come from here, then I need this side clenching and this side opening. And it's actually, it wants to happen, but it's just, we've just sort of lost the skill. Okay. And now just back into a sunk riding horse. And then that is just there. That's there playing away. Okay, now let's just try, the exercise where we do this from the warm-ups. So just to try and get this fold. So, we used to put the hand on the hip. So now if you just put the hand in the fold of the leg here, and just push it down, like you're just encouraging this hip to drop down. Then that's the feeling that we want when we come into the front foot. This is in and down. So the two hips sort of pull towards each other here, and the knees move away from each other. So let's just try this exercise. So you're just in that front foot. So when the hand is here, it's the opposite of when the hand is here, because when the hand is here, you tend to push the, like you're holding a baby, you tend to push the hip out into the hand, whereas here is this fold, this drop here, it's all important. Took me years to do that. Stepping to the side. So just here, it's this fold that enables my hip to come around. So it's sort of natural on this exercise because this is the active hand, so you really have to get it forward still. Yes, so when the mind is too much with what we're doing, then that's when the hips tend to come up and out. You can feel it here, but if you just really let this sink, then this is quite free of your lower body. So when we're in riding horse, we're in the yielding phase. So the attacking phase is they say in Tai Chi, you're 90% yielding, 10% attack. And John used to say it's actually a lot bigger than that. So it's like 1% attack. So the yielding phase is the sort of clenching, drawing in phase of the front. So you're sort of hiding yourself. You're becoming all back, if you like, which envelops the person. So riding horse, you're sort of in that phase, not too far into it, but you're sort of just hovering there, you're dwelling within yielding. Okay, now let's just yield. So just breaking here. And then, and what we're doing, just releasing here to actually bring it back. So I yield here. Yeah, so there's a point where if I was to go any further like that, I would lose my equilibrium. And so you just don't let that happen. When it threatens to lean forwards, you just slip down here, and that brings you round. So what we're trying to do is just generate a figure of 8 in the hips by softening, by yielding. So what we just want to get away from mechanical, from just doing it mechanically. Yeah. So it's something here breaks, yeah, and softens. Ooh. And a good exercise is just to stand there and just make yourself cry. Just make the tears come into your eyes and just feel, what's actually happening. You can just feel something inside just becomes weak and just sort of drops. So it's exactly the same feeling here. It's like almost like tears coming. This is what John, if I was doing this with John, the tears they wouldn't just be coming into his eyes, they'd be rolling down his cheeks. Yeah? And so it's like something in you just sort of breaks and just uses that emotion. I mean, it's like you're crying, but you're not sad. Yeah? Because that, if you were sad, it would be controlling you. Yeah? And then when it gets to a certain point where you hit that support that's behind you, and it just eases it around. It brings it back. So that optimism, which comes from your faith rather than your ego, is what brings you back from that grief, that sadness. So something in me breaks, but I'm just brought around. Because you know what it's like, when you hit rock bottom, you bounce back up. Yeah? So what we're trying to just break one side in order to make a turn. Oh. And then it comes round. Because this is basically, how, all the yields in the form are just of this structure. And then just from here, so just now I'm just getting that figure of 8 going around my hip by breaking here and then drooping the butt up and then breaking here. And just feel that hand that you just relax back into. It's that hand that magically stops you falling, stops you collapsing, gives you comfort. So 1 and 1. I sort of think of it as like, imagine you had like a sort of sheet of really thin silk just hanging, and it's sort of, it's so thin, it's really sort of just any movement in the air and it will just start moving. If you like to throw like an apple or a tennis ball at it, yeah? So this thing would go into it, and as it continued forwards, the sheet would just wrap itself around the ball. It would just envelop the ball. So that's the feeling. It's like there's this sort of diaphanous sheet behind you, and as you release here, you sink into it, and it just wraps itself around that and helps it back. Yeah. So again, it's two minds. Yeah? It's a mind that is totally with that moment of yielding, and another mind is just containing the whole system. And so this is one of the things that John was really sort of adamant about, and which is why he used to get so frustrated with me, because I just couldn't visualize, you see. And so whenever I did anything, I normally did it, I did an image of what was required because it came from the wrong place. It came from this desire to please the teacher by producing what I think he wanted. So this is, so my time in Israel, it's just been sort of getting to grips with just feeling. So it's got to come from, what John would have called the emotion. Yeah. So something in me really has to break. Something in me really has to trust. And it's only then that you start producing the energy. So it's like it's very much that the faith has to come first before you'll find any sort of evidence. Yeah, and so visualization, for me, it's not really about seeing things. It's about feeling. Yeah? So this is like the ball coming into the silk, and then this is the silk wrapping itself around that ball. There's an intruder, and I've got to envelop that intruder. I don't want to go against them, so I just smother them, smother them in silk. And there's always the possibility, the great possibility of failure. At any moment, it could collapse. So it's like a miracle that it doesn't. Yeah. So it's basically the figure of eight exercise. So it becomes everything becomes the figure of eight exercise. But you mustn't start with it. If you start with it, then it's just you imposing this sort of structure upon yourself, and it's just artificial. So we have to find it each time fresh, and then it shows itself. Oh yeah, I've been there before, but I got there by a different path. Yeah? So and I get enveloped and yield and okay, now let's just try. Just look like the first step in the form. Because basically, the stepping in the form is all just that. So just breaking here. Yeah. So I have to get in. So what I want is to actually start everything by breaking, by relaxing, by sinking, and turn. Yeah, so they all go together, they're all components of the yielding. So here, I just break here, and it sort of drags me down like this into the foot. Yeah. And then I hit that sheet, that sheet envelops me. And suddenly I'm back into my strength, into my unity, if you like, into my Danqian, having lost it momentarily. And then you just step here. And then you do the same thing here. So I relax here, and then the buttock drops down, and that circles the hands. Okay, now to bring the hands up, so basically this is like an attacking phase, and then this is like a yielding phase. Yeah. So here you're extending. So again, just break here a little bit, tiny, tiny bit. Yeah, so it's always a big problem, this part of the form, because it just feels like it's just the arms. So how does it come from the legs? How does it come from my waist? So if you just break here slightly, like you're sticking your tail out a little bit, then it will sort of lift up the hands. And now just think of the elbows being pulled down into your Danqian. So it's like a tightening here that pulls the elbows in. And that. Yeah. So you don't have to think in terms of in and down, because it will just happen by itself. So the first thing you've got to do is just get the arms up, and then you just continue the extending by just letting this break a little bit. And then you think elbows connected by threads to my Danqian, so I just tighten the Danqian a little bit, and that will pull the elbows down, and the hands will come in and down with it. Yeah. Okay, so let's just try. Okay, so just one and around. That lifts the foot, step, and then and around, and that brings me here. And then I just breaking slightly. It's like you're sort of begging. You remember Oliver in All Twist? Please, sir, can I have some more? So you're just imploring, yeah. And that will just make this go out a little bit, because you're really trying to project some sincere energy forwards. And then you turn it back on. Now you're mean, you're pulling into your Danqian. You know you've got a grip, and you're going to use it. Yeah. And then the same thing, all the postures just run from the sort of the same place. So what I need to do, when you're yielding, you have to reach out to actually connect with the person. So this hand has to go out in order for me to yield through. Yeah. But I don't want that to be aggressive. So I get it to come by yielding. So again, if I yield here, then this side recedes, but this side advances. Yeah. So I just use that to send this hand forwards. And then I yield here. And it just draws the other person in. I step, and then I just yield here. It's this pocket here. And actually just brings this sheet of silk, which is here. Imagine something's come in, like a projectile has come in, and this is just wrapped around here, but the projectile is actually coming here. And then again, this foot is clenching, like what we were doing earlier on. These toes are stretching. So again, you have everything's working together. Yeah? And always the problem with front foot postures is to sort of stop this from happening, to stop the hip coming up. So just really go down. It means that you can't get 100% in the front foot, you can only get 70%. So let's try it once more. So just yielding here, this is breaking. And then here I'm just using that to get underneath so that I can step. And then the same thing here, this is breaking. And then it's enveloped. And I use the enveloping this time to bring myself here. So most of the way here, but it's not too obvious. And then a slight break here, almost like I'm threatening to sort of become a little bit leaning forwards, just reaching forwards, and then tightening here to pull my elbows in. So now I'm back in yielding phase. So now I yield here, but that sends my other side out, but softly, and then I yield here. So when you yield, you go into the foot, stepping here, and now it's as though I'm just folding here, I'm yielding here, and that's bringing the arm up round. Yeah? If I was yielding here, then the arm would come up straight. Yeah? But I'm yielding here, and so the arm comes up, and it's already enshrouding what's actually coming in. Yeah? So this is the feeling. Yeah, it's very difficult to do this with people that haven't done all that pushing hands that we did, because they've got no feeling for the other person. Yeah. So we're so used to having another person standing in front of us, just doing this, and even though sort of technically it's probably not that useful in terms of just having that experience of touching, being touched, and just responding to the person in front of you rather than your own desires. It's just so valuable. So let's just try just slipping under and just lifting to get yourself down into the legs. It's quite a useful image. Then you get the right leaning back as well. Okay, very good.